There are many questions which keep us up at night. Is there an afterlife? Why are we here? And why is Belarus a thing? So Belarus is a country in Eastern Europe sandwiched between Poland, Russia, Ukraine and the Baltics. It's also an exceptionally young nation, having only become a fully independent state in 1991. So the name Belarus comes from the term Belaya Rus, which means White Russia. Historically, much of modern-day Belarus's lands were located within the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Here, the Belarusians were often referred to as Ruthenians, but this term was often a broad one which applied to both them and the Ukrainians. In fact, the people who lived there were often referred to as either Litvini or Palyashchuk. The first traces of a consistent Belarusian national identity don't spring up until the 19th century, roughly when all of the other nationalist movements were picking up too. During the 19th century, Belarus was a part of the Russian Empire after the partition of Poland and Lithuania, and this saw many changes brought about. Firstly, the ruling Polish Catholic class were removed from power and replaced with a Russian-speaking Orthodox one. Secondly, intellectuals within the Russian Empire began to study the Belarusian people to determine just how different they were. Covertly, that is, because the imperial government outlawed the notion that Belarusians were a distinct people from Russians. In the latter half of the 19th century, the Belarusians, led by Konstanty Kalinowski, revolted against the Russians, asserting their own identity, but this revolt was soon crushed. Of course, this doesn't invalidate the Belarusian claims of a unique identity though. It existed whether or not the St. Petersburg government wanted it to. So, as you'll know, World War I kicked off in 1914, and this saw the status of Belarus and its people change massively in a very short period of time. After pushing the Russians back to here, the Germans created a puppet state, the Belarusian People's Republic. This was short-lived, and the Russian Civil War and the following Polish-Soviet War saw the land divided like this, with some of the Belarusian lands going to Poland and the rest going to the USSR. The Belarusian lands here were known as the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic. The BSSR was enlarged twice. The first was an internal enlargement which reflected demographic lines. The second came with the USSR's annexation of eastern Poland in the lead up to World War II. After the dust from that conflict had settled, Belarus's modern borders were established and affirmed. That said, Belarus wasn't independent in any way, barring some politicking by Stalin, because, as many of you will know, Belarus, along with Ukraine, had their own seats in the UN whilst being a part of the USSR. The reason why Stalin managed to get these was that he refused to join the new UN unless he was granted extra seats, since he was concerned that he would be consistently outvoted by non-communist states. This concession was granted, and the BSSR held its own seat until the dissolution of the USSR in 1991, when its seat was transferred to modern Belarus. So, in conclusion, the origins of Belarus are blurred and wrapped up in difficulties concerning names and which state its culture is rooted in. Was Belarus another successor to the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, or was it a newcomer whose identity was forged in opposition to those around it? Be aware, though, that Belarus and its people shouldn't be seen as some offshoot of Russia, and that their history is long and varied. Belarus is in many respects a young country, but its people, under many names, have existed for much longer. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching, and a special thanks to James Bisonet, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, for supporting the channel.